There is this joke going around that Cyprus is a technology island.
The fundamentals are never there. I mean, the first version of Foody, no online payments, cash only at the beginning. We were making calls to the restaurants ourselves.
George Hadjivarnava built Foody, Cyprus's leading food delivery platform, scaling it to capture over 90% of all online food orders in the country. He later exited the company to Delivery Hero, where he went on to serve as director of engineering.
At Delivery Hero, I handled very big projects. We had adrenaline. Big corporate structure is totally different than when you are in the trenches. You operate at what happens at the code level, not just at the team of teams level. A big contract comes in, something is huge, and it shifts the needle and it changes everything. And the whole team is focused on that. Those are these magic moments. You only find it in startups, basically.
George is widely regarded as one of Cyprus's tech pioneers, shaping the country's early startup and technology ecosystem. Today, he leads engineering strategy at Terra API.
You don't need the government. At one point, if you get big enough, you influence things. You change technology, you change culture. At one point, they will influence the government.
What's your take around the current status? Maybe also when you started building your first business? And then what's the status with the government? What do you think they're doing right? What are they doing wrong?
When we first started, the infrastructure was zero. The support from the government was zero. There was a point where you had more incubators than startups in Cyprus.
So that was a thing 10
Yes.
years or 20 years ago?
2013, you had more incubators than startups. At the same time, you had authorities wanting printed receipts when you do tax submissions for a business. Imagine doing a business with 300,000 users and having 10,000 vendors, having to do...
So wait a second. So they actually wanted for Foody, for example, like 300,000 receipts
It was...
to see from a tax?
No, it was on at your service when we had the people per hour derivative, let's say. Any expenses we claimed, everything, because we got that innovation scheme grant, they wanted everything on paper.
Wow.
I mean, the overhead is huge. And we told them, no, it's going to be scanned, it's going to be digital, here are the folders, figure it out. With a lot of push, it happened. And these things opened the way.
What do you mean by push, by the way? Like, what do you do?
You just say, I only have it there. I don't have it on paper.
And you speak to whom?
To whoever you are speaking from the tax office. Some clerk there, and they need to push it up. But if the process is fixed and nobody is willing to move the needle or change something, nothing changes. So, yeah, if you get big enough or you are determined to change it, it changes.
So we start from too many accelerators, too few startups. So what happens over the last 10 years?
What happens over the last two things. First, I always say about the forex industry in Cyprus, not treating the software development market very well, because you have engineers going in with above average salary, and there is no fancy tech going on. And then they come out without more experience, but...
No fancy tech going, like, do you have a beef with the forex?
I have a beef because they stole developers, a lot of engineers. And then they come out and there is no huge learning there. So they actually came out worse in many cases because, yeah, the trading platforms and everything, they are legacy platforms. Back then it was MT3, I think MT2. So you couldn't get good talent even after that. And you got worse talent graduating from forex companies, wanting above average, above market salaries. So any people that came from abroad, they were studying abroad, coming back, they were piped into forex companies. So you couldn't get anyone good here. So the only way to hire talent was to go straight to universities. At Foody, most of the engineers we hired right out of University of Cyprus.
But what's the counter to that with a politician, right? Like, would be like, well, forex is bringing a lot of money, they're building a new technology, it's something we didn't have in the past. So what's your counter to that?
That is good, and it's good that it happens. At the same time, you need to help startups in Cyprus actually monetize and get money. Not the proof of concept, nothing. Like startups, you don't have to consider every startup as a unicorn. To build an ecosystem and infrastructure and supporting services and customers for new startups that can actually start here and go global, you need to have this ecosystem around you. From basic things like shipping in Cyprus and things that are supporting in terms of downstream integrations with the tax office, integrations with banks. There is still no open API, banking API in Cyprus. That's crazy. I mean, I can see my Bank of Cyprus balance on Revolut now, but I cannot very easily build an app that does that in Cyprus as a layer.
Yeah. Clear monopoly, by the way. Like you have the APIs. I can see it in Revolut as well, and it's like it's two banks. It's super easy to build APIs. Clear monopolies, and then you don't see actual apps being built on top of these.
Exactly, because it's very hard to actually get in the ecosystem and establish that relationship with the banking infrastructure.
Yeah.
Plus some other stuff that, I don't know, when we were doing Foody, we wanted to automate all the payouts to vendors, to the restaurants. And there was no way of doing it without human interaction. Even at the API side with the banks, every 3 hours the token will expire and someone had to be there to actually re-authenticate the process. Which it does save you a lot of time, but it's not fully automated. So you need that intervention there.
You spoke about, before we get into Foody, like you spoke about the ecosystem and ecosystem of startups. One from the outside would probably not understand this. Why is this any important?
It's important because go look at Silicon Valley. You have startups and almost every startup is a customer of another startup. So that's how you build an ecosystem. You build supporting services. You can start investing on tech and software, because if you have startups as customers, you can provide value-added services, SaaS essentially, software as a service for those customers. And you build on an ecosystem that is localized at the beginning, like the ecosystem of Cyprus. There are a couple of startups now that do accounting and integration and tax submission and trying to help businesses automate these processes and provide software as a service specifically for Cyprus. That's one thing. So if you do that, then you allow other startups to come in and not spend time and resources on this part of the business and focus on what they do best. If you start to do this as a network effect and many startups start to appear in Cyprus and they actually monetize, so they have money to spend as well, it's not just funded, it could be self-funded, then you can build startups on top of them and serve them. So you have this ecosystem of infrastructure and it scales up and you have more layers that you can build on top. We saw how it happened now from 2019 onwards. Then you have Ukraine war, you have other conflicts, you have people coming, big, not startups anymore, coming, relocating everyone to Cyprus. So you start to see the network effect. I don't want to name companies, but you have JetBrains. They brought their whole team in Cyprus. You have TradingView. You see big startups advertising for positions, hybrid, remote, or local in Cyprus. So you have big teams. But these people spend. These people have needs. These people, you can go knock on their door and make direct sales with them. Not over email, not over a cold call. You can just go and knock on a door. So that's how you build the ecosystem. And it's a two-way relationship. Like a big company comes here, you try to sell to them, but they sell something as well. And in the world we live in, where the market is global and a company can sell to anyone in the world, the in-person relationship with such things, sometimes it's more beneficial, it's different, it's something that people adopt, want, and they build upon. So nobody can make a sale maybe in a conversation like that. Like I go and knock on JetBrains' door now to make a sale. They might make a sale as well or not, but the relationship we build is very important because I know them, they know me. We expand our network, and because they are locals in Cyprus now, there is this community effect that is probably the best way to do business.
Are you actually optimistic from what you've seen the last 10 years or pessimistic?
From what I've seen the last 10 years, I'm probably pessimistic. From what I see the past 1.5 years, I'm turning to be optimistic.
What's the 1.5?
The 1.5 has nothing to do with politics or government or anything else. I just met a lot of people that are here and they like it and they want to make something out of it. And I think, as time goes by, the generation gap increases, and to see new generations that have 3 years gap. The people that I talk to, because I talk to a lot of students, and high school students and university students, I was always a fan of that. You see people in high school understanding that already the current education track that one will follow is not so viable anymore. So you start to see people that start investing in themselves earlier. You do interviews for software engineers, and you get 17-year-olds that are really competent. They can compete with senior people that are 35, and they just did that over a period of 2 years. And you see those people in Cyprus. You see them. You see people that are 30, but they never went to college, and they made something out of themselves. They are consultants, or they did contract projects, and they are here now working for people all over the world and for Cyprus. And you see that they start to build communities. If you see communities growing, and it's not spam communities, you see people helping each other or wanting to help each other, yeah, you definitely feel more confidence that this thing will actually track.
We're speaking about Cyprus ecosystem here and so on.
Yeah, and that is positive now. You see communities building around it.
I would counter your argument, to be honest. I agree with you partially. It seems to me that we're focusing a lot on the optics. And by saying that, I kind of see a repetition of what you said earlier about the accelerators. You hear accelerators and so on. And then you hear funds. And it seems to me like some sort of an effort from the government to say, we start from the money and from the picture and the optics and all of that. And us trying to convey good stories of what exists in Cyprus and so on. And I think the opposite approach should be applied. One should say, look, we didn't have a lot of successes. We didn't the only company I know of, right, outside of all the forexes is Foody. When I was growing up, the only story I was hearing was Foody. And I was using and I was seeing the approach, right? So it was the only case that you would say it's a big company, big culture, and we can speak about all of these things and so on, and big acquisition and all of these things. But the government comes and makes all of these claims that we are investing in diverse founders, we're giving money here, there is this VC, and we're trying to portray that there is so many successful stories. The reality is that there are no successful stories. There is one successful story, and one should embrace that and say, look, we don't have technology, but we should say, let's bring the technologists, let's enable them to change what we have, and let's not focus on the net sum things like real estate or all of the incentives that they gave people to get a passport, for example, for real estate. You could do exactly the opposite and say, whatever the incentive is, you can say, I'm going to enable entrepreneurship, and I'm going to enable startups, and I'm going to enable technologies. And then once you do that, you start going to universities, and you invest in people in universities, you invest in technologies. In the Valley, Y Combinator invest. If you go to a batch today, basically you see 18-year-old kids that they're reinventing the world. And they start, they raise tens of millions of dollars. And they go out to the world and they start building. And some of them become Airbnb, some of them become Stripe, some of them become these type of companies. If you are 18 years old, the person that is 40, 50, 60, that they build their whole experience is actually relevant. If you compare with AI, and with AI, you can build a whole new type of business that didn't exist in the past, and it's plain level field. So I would avoid optics. I would avoid all of these things and say, how do we enable these people that are going to build new technologies, new change, and so on, and stop all of the optic game and so on and so forth. And then also the enabling people that did this in the past.
I agree with you 100% there, and I'm not a fan of optics. I am pragmatic though, and understand that politicians will always want optics because that's the world we live in. That's how votes are acquired. I don't know. I don't want to argue about that. What I can say though is that the people try to do things, and I focus a lot on the community, and I repeatedly say this. There are communities, and at one point, they will influence the government. The government should do it in advance. The government should realize it and do it differently. 100% they are with you. And even with the real estate and the passport scheme, at one point there was a fund, a K out of every passport investment will go to innovative startups. That was a fund about it. If the investor didn't know any startup, they would just went in a black hole.
And you remember the kind of forms that you need to prove that you are an innovative startup and all of that?
Exactly. Yeah, and you see the startup. I mean, even different funds that come from the EU that we're talking about, you are saying at the YC, 18-year-olds get 10, 15 million funding. We're talking in Cyprus in 2013, I think. The innovative startup fund was 15 million euros. I think they managed to give out 1.2 million in a period of 3 years, and then the EU took the fund away. Okay, these things are crazy to think about. And besides the optics, though, I think in the backbone, some people do operate in a way that is favorable, but yeah, nowhere near what you are saying.
But it's like, it's not that. It's a competence question, because the competence is there, right? Like, there is incredible people that can build incredible things, but one should be able to give opportunities, and we need to go away from these, the accountant is going to teach you business, the lawyer is going to teach you business. Man, it's like, why don't they get George to advise startups if they want to, like, someone to build startups, right? That's a key core question for me.
That's a problem with the optics, though, because you see in the panels, you bring CEOs of traditional banks, people from the Big Four. I'm not saying they are not competent to give advice. It's not the people you want to be giving advice, though. You want people that can give raw advice, and they don't care about the optics of the advice they give. They speak from experience, and they can actually provide advice under a certain context, because not everything is the same. And you say the playing field is level now, but it's not at the individual level of every startup. I mean, everyone is solving a different problem. Everyone has a different problem. And although you can use the same tools and the same approach, getting advice from someone fully in your context is probably the best advice you can get. Because everyone can pick a book, everyone can read the best blogs, everyone can listen to the best podcasts. It's all about bringing it to context. Besides the optics of the government and how these things are approached, I would like to see more opportunities and push for people to actually be able to do this. Innovate in Cyprus and say, okay, I'm 17, I'm 18 years old. I'm not going to talk about the army at this point. I'm going to talk about the fact that I have the support, the confidence to go out and do this and understand that I'm probably going to fail, but it's going to be one of the best experiences that I have. It's going to be bigger than university. It's going to be bigger than anything else. I'm going to suffer. I'm not going to have the payroll my friends have. I'm going to be grinding in the weekends, and I want to make this happen. That push, I think that is what is missing. And because everyone sees Foody, this startup, because there are some other success stories that nobody knows about, and actually some other self-funded success stories. And big companies that are traded publicly, they are Cypriot-owned, and nobody knows about the owners. That's not the issue. It's not that we don't have success. We don't have the push from the society to actually go and try these things, because you are a very fresh democracy in Cyprus, and you can understand that 20 years ago our parents, they were with the mentality that you need to get a job at the bank or at the government to have a secure income, and that's it. So the culture is like that. I remember I was consulting with this US company that was opening in Europe, and I was talking to the owners, and we were listening to a podcast basically. And the difference is that in the US, the dream is to essentially be a family man and have your own business. In Cyprus, is to be a family man and have a good job, or a house actually. So you can see the difference on how society and education vet you to become a successful entrepreneur. And this is deeply rooted in the culture. So I'm not going to focus on optics by the government. I'm going to focus on this side of things, not even on the infrastructure. Like trying to put this in the minds of young people that you can do it from here and we will support you in the XYZ way. But even if you fail, it's actually making you more prepared to do the next thing.
Yeah.
Whatever the path is.
Yeah, it's always worth understanding the question of what was the culture in ancient Athens in the era of Pericles, right? Or what's the culture today in the Valley and so on. But given that, George, like you are that person, right? You are the type of person that probably today is considered, if not the best technologies in Cyprus, one of the best technologies in Cyprus. What gave you this drive? Can you walk me through your your own motivation and what you've done, like how was Imperial? How did this form you? How did you see things at the time? How did you get into at your service at the time and Foody?
Okay. Well, I wasn't from an entrepreneurship family. I didn't have this drive when I was young from my surroundings. I went to Imperial because, it was the best university to go to when I was graduating high school. I'm not saying I did very well at Imperial. I landed like a rock there. It was very hard for me. But what turned out to be, I flunked the first year. So I had to spend a year in London, and I had to somehow pay the rent. I wasn't even allowed to go to university. So I had a lot of time. So I started finding ways to make money. That's how my whole web app development journey started back then. And you were talking about real estate in Cyprus. That was actually my go-to. There were a lot of developers in Cyprus back then. Nobody knew how to make websites or ordering systems. So that's how I started working with web technologies. And Imperial, after this period and during my last 2 years.
So essentially you started doing this for developers and making them web pages at the time and charging them. And that was the way for you to fund the early Imperial days?
Basically, just to make rent. That was it. And
in
my
London.
spending.
Yeah.
It was not the rents we have now in London, but
Okay.
And then I realized the network effect that Imperial had. I could meet people. I finished university, and back then it was 2009. So the Goldman Sachs crisis reached the UK, Europe, and that's how I decided to come back to Cyprus. Like my path will be either go in one of the investment banks in London and start working there, or I got a job in the local telecommunication authorities in Cyprus.
Man, on that, why is everyone living Imperial? Like even today, they want to go to some sort of investment bank?
That's part of the Imperial process. So if you did the sandwich course with engineering, you did the summer working period at one of those banks, and they hired the people from there. That's how it happened. Plus, it was the best way to get a solid financial package right out of university and a solid career path. I mean, most people from computer science courses that didn't do any deeper tech, or they ended up in investment banks. That was the go-to. So I came to Cyprus, working for this secure job that we had before as part of the culture, but it was not enough for me. Like I couldn't be in a place where I just look at the clock to finish what I do because I couldn't innovate there. So with friends, I always started to do different things, like from the online ticket sales website to listing marketplaces. And that's how I met the co-founders at Foody for At Your Service. We essentially...
Who did you meet first, Michael or Argyris?
Argyris back then. And we were actually, with my partner, we were doing At Your Service 2.0 through a small software firm we had called Brainvile, I think, at the time. And that's how we met Argyris. And at one point, one thing led to another. Argyris told me to join. I enjoyed At Your Service. First thing to do was monetize the platform.
How did he convince you, actually?
Many conversations. It was actually hard for me because it was right. I think I had my first child back then. So all the vetted, stay secure job culture that I had an internal battle. But then I knew that I was going to get bored very easily, so I needed to make the step, and that's how I made the step. Probably one of the best decisions of my life back then because, self-funded, no investments, nothing. And 2 years in, we started building Foody as a pivot. Then, that's when we had to get serious and actually start building, applying things that we learned from the YC podcast, the blogs, the books, the US success stories, other Cypriots that were actually in companies, either as co-founders or founders or just working. So we could apply things and we could experiment. And that's how the whole thing span off.
What technologies existed then and what technologies didn't?
Man, I was a PHP guy back then. So, learning empirically. Like computer science knowledge from university comes at a much bigger scale. When you start something, you don't think about that. You just want to make the product and iterate, see what happens, validate the business path first. I mean, the first version of Foody, we were making calls to the restaurants ourselves. You will be ordering online, but we will pick up the phone with a route robin system, integrated with Twilio to call us whenever there was an order. And the 3 months in,
So basically, landing page and order comes in, and you place the code.
yeah.
I see.
At the beginning, we will get an email, I think, our personal emails, and we will make the order. Then we made the first Excel-style back office, and we continue to build on that. No online payments, cash only at the beginning. And 3 months in, I mean, it was huge already.
No online payments. Were you dealing with the JCC and gateway stuff early on or not?
Yes. Actually, fun fact of the JCC, at one point when Foody picked up, we got the double primary key on their main database from the traffic. But we work with the JCC a lot. So that's what I was talking about before. You don't need the government. At one point, if you get big enough, you influence things. So you change technology, you change culture, you work with the infrastructure companies, and you make things. So this is why it's important for people to start building with the hope of getting big to influence.
You know, on that though, my counter would be, this was also the experience of Stripe, but then it's the ambition that led Stripe to do all of these massive changes, because like for them, it was also the Uber story and the DoorDash story early on and so on, right? And then like my segue here is the ambition, right? But like you can think of the JCC part as they were building useful things, but they just narrowed it down into Cyprus, which it could be so much bigger if it was outside of Cyprus and so on.
100%. But doesn't mean you don't need the local market though, because it...
No, absolutely. It's exactly that. It's like you enable the local market, but then you start thinking, well, maybe other people have this exact same problem in Greece or in the UK and so on, because like also Stripe is just a very recent story. It's not like 50 years old.
That's true. We are in the Europe trap though still, because I mean, you talk to everyone in the US that comes to do business in Europe, and they tell you about the European compliance and how it doesn't allow people to operate here. Like it's not the United States. It's individual countries. They have a common governing body that is the EU, but the taxation system, I mean, the EU Inc. is just getting traction this year after a 10-year effort. So you could at one point register an EU company and have a uniform taxation and operational model across all European countries. So it's very hard. I mean, you see most startups that started in Cyprus and establish themselves in the local market, then they go to Greece, then they go to the Balkans, and that's it. The traction cannot expand beyond that.
Which I find as a bad idea, to be honest. Like there is always this step system in Cyprus that we think of. Let's start in Cyprus, and then we're going to expand in Greece. And like all of these are small markets, to be honest. And the level of difficulty is always about the market you attack. And it doesn't mean that building a bigger business is actually more difficult or more complex. It might be the opposite sometimes.
Sometimes it's exactly the opposite. Because to make a good business in a small market like Cyprus, the approach is totally different. Because it's a market of supply and demand, especially if you are B2B2C and you have the chicken and egg problem. You need to focus on both vendors and customers and end users at the same time. And you need to build very strong relationships, because word of mouth is stronger than ever in small markets. So the methodology you apply to establish yourself, provide good experience, have good relationships with everyone, doesn't apply at scale if you go in a global market where it's faceless. So that's why it's a problem when we start from Cyprus, then we go to Greece. And Greece might not be the biggest market, but it's incomparable to Cyprus. I mean, you go from 1 million to 10 million. I mean, every time you jump an order of magnitude and you add another zero, the dynamics change completely. From hiring to vendors, to users, to everything. The approach is totally different. So then you go to the 100 million user market, which is even more difficult to have direct relationships. I don't know, you hear advice that as a startup, you shouldn't have 2 big customers and not care about the rest. But at the same time, in order to build something big like Stripe, what they did with Uber and DoorDash, you need those customers to build for them, help them, and they help you at the same time. Not just as social validation that I'm working with this big company. You see the variance and all the nuances that come when you have to serve a customer as big as them. Things appear that you don't expect to have, but they help you become better, innovate, and provide smarter solutions to actually make those contracts work. So this from Cyprus is missing a lot. And I want to go back to real estate. I mean, real estate is such a big part of our GDP, but we are building the same way that we built 50 years ago. And for big projects, if you go to Limassol and you see the big towers, yeah, companies from abroad come and do this. Which for me, that's the biggest shame of all, because they might bring people here as well that they spend, but you own it.
Yeah. It's man, it goes back to the diversity idea, which is we want to diversify Cyprus outside of the things it's good at. And I think one should do the opposite, right? You shouldn't actually say, I want to be good at everything to diversify the government. You should say, well, like there is product market fit in tourism. There is product market fit in real estate. There is product market fit in these 5 things. And we should be the best in the world at them.
Exactly.
Because the market allows you to do that. And even the case with the occupation, like, you know that Turkey is here, they occupy half of the country. You can actually build military. You can build systems. Like, maybe Israel is a good example of that. That, like, there is a need. And if there is a need, there is product market fit. If there is product market fit, you can actually be building for these type of markets. So the diversification argument is like, it's completely the opposite of what it should be.
Exactly. And it's not just a matter of becoming the best or not. It's a matter of making the infrastructure and innovating on this so that you can sell it abroad. I mean, on every market that is in a bubble, usually you need to have compliance and audits and everything, and you need to enforce them. And one thing that I will argue with someone in the government relationship in Cyprus is to say, okay, we have all this real estate happening, we have an issue with auditing, we have an issue with compliance. Allow people to build businesses on top of that. Give contracts to smaller teams so that they can start to help the ecosystem with managing this process. And you give it to the private sector to actually do it for you. So this way you provide the framework for new startups to emerge. Because if they do it well here, where you have a big market on real estate and you have a lot of real estate, and you have money coming from all over the world, then yes, that team can go and sell abroad to anyone in the world because they did that very well.
It's basically the Singapore story, right? Like,
exactly.
That they decided one day that, look, we're going to export talent. We're going to export banking. And we're going to be the best in the world. And within 50 years, like, they really achieved that. And it's from a third world country. It's like one of the richest countries in the world.
And it's a very similar story to Cyprus. Exactly. I mean, British Empire, same situation that we have with Turkey. But what they said is, okay, we're going to abolish everything, language, religion. We're going to focus here and we're going to become the biggest financial market in the world.
And they operated like a startup.
Exactly. And they achieved it.
We spoke about a bit the technologies that you built in the past in Foody, but like, we spoke a bit about payments, but walk me through the transitions in technologies that you worked on. And also, you also stayed in the Delivery Hero for a number of years too. Like, what's your view on the technology shift over the last 10 years to what it is today?
At Foody, the technology shift was driven by scale. We launched in September 2015. 2017, we were already profitable. Then we had to scale, and we had to scale a lot. But the biggest shift where we needed to actually rewrite everything basically was during the acquisition. We started a bit before, following the standard break the monolith to microservices perspective that every startup goes through at one point. The acquisition came, we had big earnout targets to meet, and COVID came.
So wait a second, what do you mean by earnout targets? Can you break this down?
The gist of it is that the payout was not in one part.
Basically, once you sell your company, you have the acquirer comes and says, look, I'm going to give you X amount of money at the beginning, but then you're going to have different earnouts during the next few years.
Basically, yeah, to complete the transaction, you need to meet the targets and you will get basically paid based on those targets. So you achieve 50% of the target, you will get 50% of the payout. We overachieved because, yeah, COVID helped in that sense. Because, yeah, targets are usually on growth, profitability, revenue. But we had to handle a big scaling difference, like having a platform that works with a restaurant menu with 50 catalog items to serving a supermarket with 10,000 items. So the whole platform dynamics changed, plus all the traffic that came in. I remember during those years, we had downtime for 45 minutes total. It was just one day. It was a lockdown. Everyone was trying to eat, and you could see memes about the food tech team and trying to fight the Battle of Mordor so that everyone can eat in Cyprus. So yeah, then we had to come up with some, innovative solution. I mean, because at the beginning we just throw money at it. In 19, you didn't have Kubernetes being so popular and clusters being so readily available as automated tooling on cloud platforms. So yeah, at one point we were still on bare-bone metal servers. So yeah, we just bought RAM and installed on servers. So that's how we handled scale at the beginning. And we managed to break everything down to microservices and scale accordingly to wherever the need was. We applied techniques and heuristics like domain-driven design. We sat with everyone from business ahead in the table on the drawing board to rethink about how the system should work and what we want to achieve. At that point, our own delivery came in, and we had to have riders as well, and build systems for riders. With the Delivery Hero acquisition, we had to integrate with Delivery Hero services, global services, and not just for payments or the back office or orders, actually the rider and the fleet management and everything. We had to work with restaurants. Our restaurants were our biggest partners, so we had to integrate deeply with the restaurant systems to allow them.
Deeply, did you guys build POSs, for example?
We integrated with our existing POSs. There are POSs from student projects that happen in the GCSE level and they still work. And you have companies that do partnerships with the big software houses from abroad and popular tools or local tools that are expanded vertically in the sector. So you have to integrate with them so that you minimize the overhead on the restaurant level to actually process an order. So yeah, with the acquisition, you had to integrate with different systems, apply different modes of communication. At one point, we needed to migrate a big part of the platform to central services while maintaining orders because people continue to eat, they continue to order groceries, and Foody was still growing. So yeah, the technologies at hand didn't really change. I mean, but the methodology had to change because when you're in a startup at the beginning, it's all about getting the traction and reiterating a lot and building a trust at a different level. When you go to the midpoint, you are established. People allow you to make mistakes because you already show the value. But then you need to start showing that you are an adult now and you are going to be reliable and resilient. So the methodology of doing things changes. You cannot have the YOLO ship to production thing on a Friday night just because you are a startup and you will be excused. So the whole approach changes. And transitioning to what we have now with agentic development and all the tooling and how fast you can make an MVP, the fundamentals of having a resilient, maintainable system that you can build features on and not be locked in a vendor that you own essentially, still apply. So the methodology, everything. I mean, even if you take agentic development, you can one-shot an app that will do anything you want, but you cannot one-shot an app that will scale to 100 million users like that. I mean, the same methodologies apply. The groundwork is done by the agent, but the ideas and what data points matter, where you want to focus, and actually what happens in the code still need to be part of the product development lifecycle.
Are you suggesting that infrastructure now is even more important?
For sure.
And do you see these changing? Like, do you see agents actually figuring this out?
You see agents figuring this out, but there is a gap. There is a gap because everything is made for people. And there are a lot of, I don't want to go into semantics like skills or aggregators or APIs or documentation. You see a shift, but the experience is not agent native. It's not meant for agents. So you don't have this layer where the communication is not for humans actually. It's for an agent to figure things out, because if you instruct the agent in natural language and the agents need to translate that into their context and then into, I don't know, a documentation of an API, and then do the work as a human, essentially, how a human a developer will integrate, get the results, come back to you and communicate the outcome in natural language. You have all these steps in the middle that are just data transformation, essentially. And that every time you transform the data, you lose context. So there needs to be a layer that bridges.
So how is so? Like, why do you lose context every time you translate?
Because, I don't know if we want to go to specifics of how LLMs work, but it's a simulation of a brain. And it's a simulation of a brain in a context. We can see it ourselves as humans. Like we talk now about software development and agent communication. If we switch to football, it's going to take some time for us to adjust. And we cannot carry all that bandwidth together. Same happens with the agent. The more shifts you make in context, the more context you lose. And if it's just a way of transforming information from one layer to another, you lose context without needing to.
But I think that's the maybe the current big thing, context engineering, which is figuring out how to enable the agents to understand the information and operate on that information.
Exactly. Yes. Don't get me wrong. That's what I'm talking about. What I'm trying to say is that it shouldn't be done on the traditional ways of communication and documentation about systems. It should be a different layer, because at the end of the day, the user query comes in natural language. It's not just a natural language and what the user says, the exact query. Someone needs to identify the intent behind the query. So that's where agents help us even more. So if we help agents understand that intent better and the context and build layers that are not just APIs, they understand the context of the query, they actually respond if they don't understand it correctly in a way that they can understand it, and the communication happens there, not on transforming open API spec to an SDK and a code base.
Yeah,
that's not what this
is. Yeah,
exactly.
About. So it's like, how do you go from the user who might be the developer or the end user to the user that is the AI? But let me actually give some context before we go into that topic. We caught up maybe, I don't remember, was this a year ago?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, roughly a year ago, we had a conversation together, and then we decided you joined Terra, and at the point that, I think the difference here is you saw the whole evolution of Foody to Delivery Hero, and you saw all of this success and all of that scale, but then you joined Terra at the point that Terra has customers in 120 countries and operates with millions of users on a daily basis, and you join at the point that we signed some of the biggest AI labs in the world, and it just fires all over the place, right? So can you describe me what's your first few weeks, and how do you survive chaos?
I thrive on chaos, especially when it comes in spikes. Honestly, I was surprised by how well I could shift into that mindset, because at Delivery Hero, I handled very big projects, had the incidents, we had that adrenaline level, but in the big corporate structure is totally different than when you are in the trenches and you operate at what happens at the code level, not just at the team of teams level. So it's totally different. I like this approach where you only find it in startups, basically. Like a big contract comes in, something is huge, and it shifts the needle and it changes everything. And the whole team is focused on that. Those are these magic moments that they are chaos, but they are not chaos, really. If you look at it on a bigger timeline and you see in hindsight what happened and how the team operates and how everyone comes together, for me, that's the best thing about my job. I love that because you control the chaos, you tame it, then you know what you need to do next. All the mistakes appear, all the good things appear. You essentially reevaluate everything and you know where to focus. So what I saw with when I came, it was the first 3 weeks were the toughest and funnest at the same time. First of all, I get to meet everyone in the team on how they are in that mode, which is the best place to see your teammates and build a relationship with them. So that was the one thing. The other thing, I really liked how much Terra knows the domain it operates in and how much deep knowledge there is, not just at the provider level where it's this partner or the other partner. It's how everything comes together and how well you can combine all that knowledge and apply it to every specific use case, whether that's an AI house or whether that's a simple app that tracks health data. So that deep knowledge in Terra is what amazed me, and how I would ask questions and get answers I will never expect to get on the spot.
Well, obviously in you can call it a transition, or there might be some more interesting word, but it operates with so many developers, and like I always get this type of questions of like which type of app and which type of developer, right? But the reality is like there's just so many varied. There is people that are building wearables, there is people that are behind hospitals, there is people that are behind AIs, and it's so different use cases. But always there is this layer and this infrastructure that you can keep building. And all of this time we've been building this technology that obviously like it all started with the siloed information that there is siloed information about your health, and it sits in a hospital, it sits in a device, it sits in a health app, and it's like 300,000 new health apps every year, right? It's crazy. And all of that information just stays there. So initially that was a problem we were solving. Then it transitioned to a problem of, look, there is all of this siloed information in so many different places. One is you build the connectivity. Then second, you enable developers to access it in an easier format, in a normalized format, and so on. But then there is more ways to be more useful to people. So it's, can I enable DNA access? Can I enable blood ordering? Can I enable, there is just so many more services that you can add on top. And there is obviously all of these companies out there is like, there is Aura and there is Whoop, right? That they came out and said, we're going to offer new blood services and so on. Or maybe it's Function that is just incredible on a global scale of how they do that. So it's always a question, how can we be more useful over time? But then the transition I'm speaking about is it's changing for the last maybe a year in the way that all of the AIs start using Terra. And then the question changes from, well, how do I serve a developer to how do I serve this AI? And AIs are so different in the way that they consume information. And working with the big labs actually just allows you to see behind the curtain, like just see how things, where things are moving. So maybe how do you see that? How do you see, like, what are the new learnings that you get that people might want to hear about?
Okay, yeah, I see where you're going with this. I mean, if we look at AI and how it started and how automation started with LLMs, like we went beyond the ChatGPT, ask about anything mode, and we start building things. First thing that came out was MCPs. Then MCPs are not so popular anymore, and now you have skills. And you see that you already have some communication protocols, let's say, that are not protocols in the traditional sense that are very strict and documented. It's way of working with the model, ways of working with the model. These are more focused on human to model interaction, but you don't have model to system interaction. There is the MCP, there is a skill that maybe describes how to access this API. That API is not meant to communicate with the agent. It's not written in a way that it can communicate with the agent. So I think the next layer is not building APIs and normalizing data. The next layer is actually helping those agents communicate with systems without losing context. So I think this is where the big play is now. And this is the next layer that will come on every industry. I mean, from payments to health data or wearable data or someone tracking their path at the individual level on anything they do. So that layer is what is missing now between the agent and the systems. Because, I mean, between the end user and the model, it's pretty much done since 5 years ago. Like the first version of ChatGPT actually established that. So that's not the problem anymore. The problem is how the agent on its own in the background without having to be prompted every time, communicating with the systems it needs to communicate without having to go through documentation that was built for humans and developers in the past. So there needs to be a system where, a layer where you transfer the context as best as possible and you have an iterative communication. It's not a one query and one answer anymore. So there needs to be an interaction that happens and not just direct response. So it could be over a period of time. So we could have an agent working on something, working with a system, and 3 or 4 days in a process, they need to query back the user in a way to get some more information, or they need to query another system or get an approval. These layers do not exist now. And that's where the next shift is, I think.
It sounds like we're describing the creative process, isn't it? It's like if I start writing something down, I'll just go for a walk or speak with someone, think about this idea, write something down, then go back, start erasing this, and then it's just going to take me 10 days to compile this idea under a piece of paper. But it sounds like this is where it's going, isn't it?
Exactly, yes. And we always think about AI and agents as something that can do something fast. This is the showcase part, is the optics that we talked about before. That's the optics. The real value is actually being able to leverage them to maximize the value you get, to maximize the autonomy of the agent, but be there when you are needed. Like the human in the loop part will always be there. So that's where we need to optimize. And that's how systems work anyway. So you don't want an agent to do a once-off task. You want an agent to actually be an agent and do things for you. So there needs to be a way that you compile that idea, as you said, you build on top of it, and then you let it go again. It works, and then it comes back to you. For us to be able to achieve this, we need to have that layer of communication so it can work autonomously, it can gather information, but then it comes back to me. Because at the end of the day, I'm the one who's driving the system. This is my argument actually against the standard talks that, yeah, AI will take everyone's job. It may take everyone's job at one point. But the level that everyone will be able to operate and the work that everyone will be able to do is completely different.
It kind of sounds like the agents are today still being used like Google by majority of people, which is search, right? Whereas majority of the work that we're doing and where this is going is how can I have a system that I give it time and go for a specific outcome, right? It's some sort of like, if I parallelize this with a really bad parallel, it's something like a football team, right? Like you want to achieve a goal, which is getting the league. Let's not speak about that. You have someone that does all of the transfers for that team, and then someone that trains that team, and then it goes day to day playing the games and so on, and it takes a year's time to actually complete that goal. But it's that process of doing all of the right things to achieve that goal. And maybe in health, like what I'm really excited about where this could go is if you decide that, look, I live in Cyprus, but I one day want to be an Olympic athlete, or I want to, like longevity is trendy now, so maybe I want to live until 120 years old, or I want to be the best student and end up in Imperial College and get the best grades. Like you provide this system with information and you say, here's my DNA, here's my blood, here's my time series information coming from wearables and all of these health apps and so on. And then this system constantly sees the world and says, hey, like I saw that you ate this today and I saw that you trained in that way. I think you should just go and do these 5 things. And then constantly looks at your information and you end up as close as possible to that goal. Instead of you listening to like some sort of accident happened one day and you just learned that you had this like deadly disease, like out of blue, that you never really considered, right? So, and it's more of a, going back to Imperial and maybe engineering, it's more of the feedback loop idea, isn't it? It's there is inputs, outputs, feedback, and you allow your health to become this engineering system that constantly optimizes for yourself and for your best outcome, instead of just learning like a static sample one day that you could always see and investigate prior to.
It's exactly that. And it doesn't have to be just target-based. It could just be monitoring-based anyway. Having a target to do this definitely makes you more motivated to have this system helping you. But we always talk about the big advantages of AI is how our health will be in a much better place. And we can monitor everything and we can have the AI help us in this. It's not just that though. It's nobody has access to continuous monitoring and someone looking at everything that happens to them and being fully dedicated to them 24/7. I mean, a doctor cannot do that for you. So even if you are a billionaire and you have a team of doctors with you every day, they still go to sleep, they still have to communicate, they still have to share a way of working. So AI can help you bring all these things together, and AI can start looking at things progressively and start building everything on top as you go along. Because methodologies change, people change, habits change, even the blood sample you will get changes and the way you get the blood sample changes. So in order to keep track of everything and keep it together and get the feedback loop with you or with anyone else in the meantime and build on top, nobody can do it better. You need someone that will be there 24/7 and respond to any input and ask the question that it needs to ask to get the best possible outcome. And that's the road we are opening now.
In George, there is the, obviously, like, these days we have more secret projects than public projects, right? But if we speak a bit about that, like, for the project we can speak about, what tooling are we building with AI? I think, and one of the very interesting things, right, is like rebuilding the internal tooling of a company of how does sales work? How does hiring work? How do I speak to existing customers? All of these things completely change. So can you give me an idea of that?
Yeah, basically, Terra is not the biggest team. And the way we applied ages now actually to hiring, like how many footage does our system go through from all the candidate interviews? How many people and customers and how we look about everyone we want to speak to, how much time it took before, and how much manual work it took before. And the level we operate now is completely different. How our systems communicate with each other, I mean, the downstream systems and the upstream systems. Before, we had to build tooling for this, and automations, and work on things that don't really give direct value to us. They just need to happen so that they are not done manually. But the work needed to build them like 5 years ago, 3 years ago, 2 years ago was huge. Now, much easier. Even to do the MVP and have all your systems work together or extract a report and do an analysis on what happens, to observability in systems, to building dashboards for observability. I mean, now with all the big partners we have and names like Perplexity and everything, the systems we built to observe all of those integrations, if we had to build them from scratch, we will still be building. So, I mean, the dashboard improvement we make, even from basic things like SEO or GEO or monitoring our revenue stream and how we bill customers and the potential errors that we could have there, reevaluating SLAs and reviewing code, shipping code, making big changes in a platform like Terra, which, you know, you have more than 100 providers and suppliers, and you have big customers with millions of users and, you know, processing billions of events every day and shipping a code change that could bring everything down. So the confidence that we have gained now with all the tools we built with AI, internal tooling that is visible to no one, is huge. I mean, I've been with the team not even 3 months now, I think, and I already see the difference in the confidence of people that are not in engineering at all. We have people in our customer success department pushing PRs, and the team reviews them, and this is huge. I mean, you see how much more we collaborate with each other, how much now everyone understands the platform, documentation, explaining what happens in the system, both to us and to our customers, is much easier now. I mean, the deep dives we can make and the optimizations we can do are huge. And all those secret projects that we have that we never shown anyone, now we have the bandwidth to actually productize them and come and provide that different layer that we talked about to every one of our customers, which probably in 2 years' time, 20% of our customer base will be agents instead of actual developers.
There is this, if I make this a bit practical, we had this, Terra roughly receives like 20,000 applications every year now, 20 to 30. And then the problem is how do you recognize if Nikola Tesla applied, right? It's just an impossible problem because if you consider the most successful companies in the last 10 years, it is some sort of CRM in sales or CRM in hiring. And it's not really solving the hiring problem. It is a good presentation of the people that come into your pipeline, which was like, if you think about it, in the AI era, it's so dumb, right? Whereas now, it used to take roughly 3 weeks end to end to do an interview process with a candidate. Now, we just built this tooling that basically goes and says, well, first of all, I'm filtering for the information I need. And you can provide to the AI and say, hey, like, here's the type of person I'm looking for. Here's the type of traits. Here's the type of, like, everything that you want to understand from that person. And then the application process goes from, like, I answer my questions and send my CV to here's this video interview and here's this coding interview and so on. And all of these stages are actually evaluated from an AI on the majority, right? It's like 90% of it is just done by an AI. So now all of a sudden, instead of having 3 weeks, you can compact this and say, well, look, the last interview stage is going to be with 3 people and it's going to be everyone together and doing the judgment. But like, if you think about it, now the candidate can go and say, I'm doing all of that in one day, right? And you can compact time so much, which becomes incredibly useful and resourceful and so on. And there's like, and that's hiring, right? And then if you consider, like, let's say the way to operate at scale is always about portfolio, right? Like the most successful stories, if you understand Sequoia or Y Combinator, right? Like if you take the Sequoia story, you have the founder of Sequoia, early days, working in microchips, and then understanding that microchip is going to be the next big thing. And then he builds a portfolio of the 10 companies in microchips that he really believed that are going to be the best. And then from these winners, he's investing so much more money, and he just generates this portfolio strategy. And maybe that's also the same for Stripe, because Stripe did exactly the same, right? It's like the DoorDash story and so on. Like they had all of these customers that they were building more tooling for them over time, but they knew who's going to be successful and spend more time on and so on. And then they grow to this massive company today that can serve like all of the companies, because if you become more useful to some of your customers over time, then you can use this as an R&D to go back and build more products, be more useful over time. So I think like all of this tooling that you build internally allows you to move away from this CRM logic and say, well, it is a problem worth being solved in a very different way. So can we really focus on the important things? And I usually say, like, for the CEO, is like it's the kind of description of doing all the tasks that nobody wants to do. And I'm so happy that AI exists to get this out of the equation.
And these are tasks that are difficult to teach someone to do objectively. I mean, on paper, everyone can do them, and it's not the biggest task, but the effort it takes to organize, especially hiring, as you said, or things like that, it's very hard to organize at scale. And even other back office administration stuff, again, it's very hard to organize at scale. I mean, from payroll to anything else and having to gather everything, even though there are SaaS and ready-made companies that do this supposedly, is still a burden. And the fact that we have this automation internally for these processes and we have the time to focus on other things is one thing, but it's also the artifacts that are produced from those processes. Now you can collect objective feedback on how that process goes. You can have artifacts, you can have an audit, you have a history of what happened. So it's much easier to build on top of those things and understand them much better, because the operator is the same. You don't have different operators. You don't have them in a small company and in smaller teams, but you don't have the internal politics that skew the information or mask the information or provide a veil on top so that upper management doesn't know exactly what happens in the trenches. So now you have the operators and you have the conversation. I mean, now you can share the conversation you had with the model to achieve this and pass it on to the next person, and they have the context. So it's much easier to give work to someone else and have someone replace you when you are away. These things are huge, and they are just the first layer, though.
I think it's the idea of the brain, right? It turns out that you can build an internal brain in the company and an external brain in the company that does the actual service, right? But then if I have it's no longer some sort of notion, no longer some sort of here are all my processes. It is, here's the internal brain that really understands what everyone understands in the company, and that everyone can query and have full transparency of what happens in that company, and learn all of the information, the conversations with customers, and where everything is moving. So basically there is information and information symmetry plus intelligence on all of the things that used to be chores, and you can allow this to become this such an important piece of the business.
I think it was, I don't remember who, but essentially what it happens, the more senior you become, it's how many decisions you have to make in a day and how much is the weight of the decisions you make. And one thing that happens is that people, as they grow up in business professionally, they get this gut feeling, this seniority. They can make decisions much faster, more educated decisions that carry weight, and they are propagated across the company. But there is never a decision log of how this happened. Now with AI, you have that decision log. So that's where the brain is. You can know why we made this decision. You can know what action did we take and what was the outcome. So if you keep feeding that and keeping that context in, that's how you build the brain. And maybe it's not a company brain. Maybe it's Kyriakos' brain or George's brain in context, and they somehow work together. So but depicting that log of decisions and the why and the how and how we came to those decisions, I think this is the biggest value that didn't come yet, but will come in the future as we operate on these tools for 1, 2, 3 years to get that experience out to the tool. Because it's not a matter of the tools growing or the context window growing. It's a matter of how decisions were made, why, and keeping that context only as part of the brain.
You mentioned something before which is tangential to MCPs are outdated. Most people consider MCPs useful today. So why do you think that?
I mean, MCP essentially is an API. So it's a set of instructions and API endpoints that give context to the agent to query those APIs. But it's the same as giving the OpenAPI documentation to an agent to go and call the server. Okay, the MCP provides you a set of permissions that you can put, and having the API keys with the right permissions again. So it doesn't invent anything new. It's not a new process. It's the same process. What I'm saying is that the part of the brain that becomes more useful and the context that the agents need to carry needs to be optimized. I mean, still all the coding tools now, you have 1 million context window and everything, but nothing operates well beyond the 100K. So you start to see the hallucinations happening. So it's a matter of keeping the context small. So if I have an MCP server and the protocol to, work with Figma or any other tool, I still carry the weight of that context around every time I communicate. And I still have to transform the query to the MCP command and use the tool and the agent to figure out how it will work with the tool. And then we have skills that ease that process a bit more. And you can have sub-agents that focus on that skill and use that tooling to perform that job. But the orchestration still happens in the traditional way. So the agent figures out, I'm going to use that skill, and you call that API. That's what happens behind the scenes. There is no layer that says, okay, I'm going to tell that API that my intent is to do this. And this is the context that I carry, the actual context, not the communication protocol context. This is what I'm trying to find out. This is what I'm trying to build. And these are the specs, the PRD, the intent. You transfer that context to the other agent or the other API that will work behind the scenes. That's why I'm saying MCPs are not dead. They are used. They are tools. But still, the gist is the same as it was before. I'm calling an API to perform a task. It's a command.
Yeah. My addition to that would be like for majority of MCPs today, they from a user experience is not the best, and there is big delays and so on. So it's more of the question of how do we remove technology rather than add technology. So by removing processes and by removing technology and by making things easier, so the user experience is better, so the agent understanding is better, and so on.
Basically, one good example for this is, I don't know, most football leagues, it's the end of the season, and you want to see how many points your team needs to take, or what's the worst and best case scenario for something to happen. It's like you can start asking points per play and how many games are left and when does each team play, and gather data and then make a report and see what are the best and worst case scenarios. At every interaction the agent that has with the system, that's how it works now with MCPs and skills. So at any particular subtask that is happening, the intention is never transferred, the original context. So it all happens in parts, which is good because you can control those parts, you can make those parts secure, but you get a portion of the value that you could get if you transfer the context anywhere. So let's say I'm calling an API to get the points or to get the data for this period in time. The data might not be available, the data might be obscured. Maybe I cannot call that small or such big of a window because it's a performance issue or whatever. If I transfer the context with me and I have a layer in that system that is built for agents, I can actually optimize that query at runtime because I know the intent. It's like, I don't know, fetching every row in your database to do a sum. I know the database can do that for you. But if you tell the database, let's say, or that system that I don't just want the sum, I want to compare the sum to something else, or I want to see if the sum actually changed from last week, and you transfer that context to the system can perform much better for you and be more optimized and perform the task with the context in mind. I think that's the best I can simplify this and explain that the context needs to be carried. And this is part of teams and people building software since the beginning of software. So identifying the intent behind the request so that you can build the system in that way. I have a story that I always say. I don't remember which client I was working with during my web development days. Spec was to make the images in a listing page of an eShop smaller. So what do you naturally do? You go through some CDN or whatever, and you compress the images. You make them a lossless compression so that you have, faster response times. I don't know. The true intent was that the stakeholder at the time wanted to make the images fuzzy, a bit blurry. Why? So that they will force the person to click the zoom in icon to capture that intent and capture interest on the product. So the spec came totally different. I didn't know the actual intent. So a lot of work was done to make this optimization and everything. That was back in 2009, I think. So yeah, we didn't have the tools that we had now, where the problem could be solved with just a CSS filter on the spot in 5 minutes. So you can see that carrying the intent with you is very important. And this still happens with agents now, with every system, and with people as well.
I'm going to ask you 2 more questions before we finish. I'm going to zoom out a bit for Cyprus. And as always, I'm unfiltered, right? So there is this joke going around that Cyprus is a technology island. If you would actually be able to do 3 changes for this to really happen, what are the 3 changes?
Okay. Number 1 change is I will have local shipping infrastructure, both domestic and external. We are in an island. It's very difficult to compete in anything that has to do with shipping and trading, both in and out of Cyprus. So that's one thing. The other thing I will change is how everyone interacts with government systems. So we say we're a technology island. Our government has a lot of technology projects that they do innovations right now, but the fundamentals are never there. I go now and try to incorporate the company. You can do most of the things online, You still need to go to the company's house for them to sign the official papers for you. You pay online, you do everything online. So the fundamentals are not there. And if you don't have those, I don't think you can be considered a technology island. And the third and final thing is clear and common way to get tax benefits, bootstrap your business, and make that be deeper in the whole education part, especially in high school education. Giving the advice to people and letting them know, forcing them to actually go and invest in tech, not monetary wise, like themselves. Go and experiment. Make tech work for you, make money from tech. Even if it's just doing AI consultancy and helping small businesses adopt AI in their daily workflow. I know this sounds primitive, but without that, we will never be a technology island. Like if we don't have the mentality of the people here, believing in technology, investing in technology, using it, not just for optics, but actually having the experience working with it, doing the research, playing, see how they can monetize, and apply it in the local industries that we are already good at. We talked about that in the beginning, but yeah, that's what I would change. The optics of the government, I wouldn't care. There will always be optics.
In your second point, it's can you imagine that you still, in the era of AI, that you can do your whole balance sheet, the AI does the whole thing. You need approval from an auditor and an accountant to give it to the government. It's that AI does the whole thing.
What worries me is that the auditor still approves manually and not from AI. This is the biggest thing I worry about.
Yeah. I think we need some sort of you get a piece of land, like maybe in Z, and you say, I will get every person that leaves the military from Cyprus and get them, everyone that wants there, give them $100,000 and, or maybe someone that leaves university, right? Like all of the youth of the country and say, I'm going to give grants to these people and let them build whatever they want. I'm going to remove all of the processes and remove all of the accountants, lawyers that give these funds and so on, and enable these people to build, and then ask from all of the investors from the valley to come here and tell them, we're going to, like, anything you invest, we're like, if there is downside, if you lose your money, we're going to give you your money back. So you have the talent there. Then second, you bring the investors from the outside and you make it risk-free. And then you actually focus, maybe focus on the things that we know that we have problems in or that we actually have product market fit in. But yeah, it's a tangent that we can go forever. So just to close, you've seen paddle over the years in Cyprus. So walk me through if a startup today was building technology for paddle and tennis in Cyprus, given that we have so many courts, so many stadiums, so many people playing, what technologies should they be building, and what are we lacking and we can be better in the space?
Okay, I mean, in the space there's a big player that done something. But
who is the big player?
Playtomic.
Ah, okay, yeah.
Yeah. But that's just on the managing bookings and providing the end user service of scoring and everything. At the same time, the community side of things and what it takes to run a paddle club, what it takes for someone to be involved in the paddle community, and all the spending that goes around paddle, because it's like with every sport. When there is a hype, you see everyone, they invest in gear, they invest in clothing, they invest in the best shoes, they look at the videos, they try to get better, they do all those things. That's one part of the story. The whole other part of the story is the underlying management of a paddle club. Who is needed to turn on the lights? How do you turn on the lights? Most people incorporate in the price, and I pay the same price for night as I pay for day. There is no measuring there, even how much it costs to light up the course at night. Security. You have cameras and play and reading your play and recording to AI systems helping you perform better. I mean, you see now on every sport apps that are coming out that they help you and train you in a sport that teams of 2 or 3 people have built in less than a year now. And it's people that who are actually operators, and it's people that were probably 2 or 3 times founders with big exits. And they now build these apps because they have the tooling to build them themselves and much faster, and they are built on this sport. So in paddle, I will definitely invest in these things, because one good thing in small markets is you can have face-to-face communication with almost every one of your users. So the feedback you get is much more direct. Even if that's a paddle court owner or a paddle player or a coach that is coming from abroad to do a session in a clinic in Cyprus. So yeah, I don't know what technology exactly we can go use, but it's a popular sport. It's both B2B, it's both B2C. There is bookings everywhere. There are people that are learning the sport every day, are increasing. It's a perfect place to start new things. I will start from training, I will start from tracking progress, and I will start from tracking revenues on the business side and how to optimize those.
Maybe the last one is if you go to Spain and if you see the history, like you see Alcaraz, he was like 16 years old, he comes up, best player in the world. You see maybe Yamal in football, he comes up 15 years old, like he's the best in the world. So if maybe this has some business sense, maybe this has some coaching sense and so on, but say you wanted to make Cyprus a country that the actual paddle players become really good on a global scale, how would you approach it?
Okay. In countries such as Spain, paddle is a sport for 17, 20 years now. In countries such as Cyprus, it's like a sport for 2 or 3 years now. So it's completely different. Even the people that you will play with are completely different. Like one example is that most courts that are covered in Cyprus have an 11-meter height, which is the minimum requirement. If you meet a player from Spain and you tell them you are at 11 meters height, they will not play. Most of their balls, they will hit the roof. So they want 15 meters, 13 meters. Totally different game. So how do you track that? How do you see that progress of a player that goes from the 10-meter court to the 15-meter court in height? You need to see patterns. You need to track what are the best players doing. And how do you track it? So you need a way to measure everything and apply the same patterns, observe what you do, and see what you need to change. So in order for that to happen, you need to have a framework of tracking your progress. You need to have the right people to play with and play differently, because if you play the same people every day, you will never get better. So you need that variation and the tracking and measurement and all the factors that affect your play. I mean, now you start to see in gyms now that do focused classes and personal training for paddle players, because the movements are different. The muscles you use are different. The explosiveness is different. It's not the same as tennis. So the way you run is different. So you need all this knowledge and experience to actually help players progress in that sport. The basics are the same. The tools that to achieve them now are much different. The youth football team, national team of Cyprus, they don't have trackers on them. The average team, U16 in Cyprus, they have trackers. So you can understand the difference that you can achieve if you measure. How still the government is just for optics and is not there in the important stuff. Yeah, I mean start young. I mean, most people that start paddle now are over 18. I mean, you rarely see kids that are 7 playing paddle, but you see a lot of kids that are 7 playing tennis. Paddle has a much faster learning curve. Now to reaching the top, I wouldn't be able to say. But yeah, the younger you start, the more patterns you can see, the more you can apply stuff, the more you can experiment with and reach that top level. But starting from youths now is probably the most important.
Super. That's an awesome chat, man. Cool.